Let's get those lineups set for Week 14 next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers here with Heath Cummings, and we're going to set your Week 14 lineups. We're going to give you some advice for every position, and we'll start out with quarterback, where there are some interesting questions, I think, facing some of the lineups that we'll have to make. And I'm going to start off with, how are you feeling about Derek Carr on Thursday night against the Rams, and would you start him over, let's say, Deshaun Watson, Tom Brady, and Jared Goff?
Those are exactly the three names behind Derek Carr in my ranking.
Same for me.
It goes Derek Carr, Deshaun Watson, Tom Brady, Jared Goff in that order. Now, in the projections, I actually have Tyler Huntley and Mike White just above Carr, and that's an adjustment I've made in the rankings where I would start Carr over those two as well. That puts Carr at QB 12, right behind Kirk Cousins.
Let's say you had to make a choice between Derek Carr and Trevor Lawrence, who did not practice on Wednesday with his foot injury. Obviously left the game on Sunday, came back. Didn't seem like a foot injury at the time, but that's clearly what he's dealing with. How would you approach that decision? Would you go with Derek Carr ahead of Trevor Lawrence?
Yep, I would.
What if we find out Trevor Lawrence practices Thursday before the game?
If it's a full practice, then I'd go Lawrence. But if it was a partial practice, I'd still go Carr.
All right. Now, I think on a typical week, Cam Akers would be a fairly easy sit. But, we've got 6 teams on bye, some big names at running back. I'm in a scenario where I would feel great if I had Cam Akers on my team because I think I'm going to have to start Jalen Warren and Zamir White in one league, fighting for a playoff spot. Love to see that. Let's see if there aren't some running backs we can find to start Cam Akers over. Would you start Cam Akers or Zonovan Knight with Michael Carter returning to practice on Wednesday?
Yeah, I haven't downgraded Knight yet for Carter playing, but I won't downgrade him that much. Knight's a top 15 running back for me without Carter. He'll be around 20 with Carter. Cam Akers is closer to RB 28. So there are not a lot of guys. There's one guy who you might be thinking about starting that I would start Cam Akers over, and that's James Cook. Just because of the matchup and the uncertainty. The Bills are a team, and the Rams are too, known for one guy leads the backfield one week, and the next week it's somebody entirely different. I don't feel a lot of confidence in either one, but they're closer to RB 30.
What about Cam Akers or Isaiah Pacheco?
Even in full PPR, neither one of them catches any passes. I would start Isaiah Pacheco in both formats.
Cam Akers or any Dolphins running back?
I'm going to blindly trust that they are going back to Jeff Wilson. I would start Jeff Wilson, not blindly, I guess. He's not near as high as he was in the past. He's right around RB 24, but I would start Jeff Wilson over Cam Akers.
All right, so trying to avoid Cam Akers even so, and I think that makes sense. He had 17 carries for 60 yards last week, and that kind of feels like a best-case scenario, especially we don't know who the quarterback's going to be for the Rams. It might be Baker Mayfield, who they added 2 days ago, so yeah, not a great situation there. Are you giving any consideration at this point to sitting Mike Evans?
Lots of consideration, but I'm probably not going to do it. He's still right around wide receiver 24 for me. I would sit him for Marquise Brown and Jerry Jeudy. So there's a couple of names, but I think in most situations you're starting Evans for at least one more week.
Garrett Wilson, obviously ahead of Mike Evans.
Top 12 guy, well ahead of Mike Evans, and actually one spot ahead of Chris Godwin in my projections. I do have Godwin ranked higher in the rankings.
What about Josh Palmer with Mike Williams potentially coming back this week?
I would actually start Mike Evans over Josh Palmer in both situations, but if Mike Williams come back, definitely Evans over Palmer.
Would you start Mike Williams over Mike Evans?
Probably not in his first game back. I'd like to see him play a full game without getting hurt again.
All right, and how about Zay Jones, Brandon Ayuk, or DJ Moore versus Mike Evans?
Evans definitely ahead of all of them. Zay Jones worries me quite a bit if there's no Trevor Lawrence. I rank those guys DJ Moore, Zay Jones, Brandon Ayuk, but none of them in my top 28 wide receivers. Ayuk, the one I'm most scared of. That 5.5 yard average depth of target for Brock Purdy is not. It's good for basically everybody on the team except for Brandon Ayuk.
Well, let's move on to one of those guys on that team. How are you feeling about George Kittle heading into Week 14 with Brock Purdy at quarterback?
He is tight in, let me check just to make sure I say this correctly, tight in 22 in my projections, and I just said, I don't care. It's George Kittle. I'm ranking him 8th. So I'm starting George Kittle this week. Next week, he plays the Seattle Seahawks. I'm starting George Kittle the next week. If I make it that far and he's been a disaster in the next 2 weeks, then I might consider sitting George Kittle. Would.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are only, if I have this right, I think there are only 4 tight ends over the last 3 weeks averaging more than 50 yards per game. So position still pretty bad. Probably still starting George Kittle, I think, is the takeaway there. And that's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll be back tomorrow breaking down Thursday Night Football. We'll have some more start-sit questions for Week 14. We'll see you then.